On December 16, 1977, in Willmar, Minnesota, 8 women resorted to going on strike because of what they viewed were unfair labor practices of National Citizens Bank of Willmar. Among the many reasons they walked out, the main breaking point was when they were forced to train a new male employee for a higher-ranking job, which the women were not offered an opportunity to apply for. Despite criticism and debate in the community, the women showed great persistence in their efforts to fight the sexist labor practices. Although the 8 women, later called the Willmar 8, failed to establish equal workplace opportunities for themselves, the impact they made on young equal rights activists, as well as women in the banking industry, was a true success of their strike. In the 1930s, Americans were just coming off of the Great Depression. The amount of women in the workforce rose because the jobs deemed for women were less affected by the stock market crash. In the 1940s, a woman named Velma Hopkins and other African American women went on strike for better working conditions, pay, and civil rights. It was the only time the place she worked, Reynolds Tobacco, had a union. The union influenced a generation of civil rights activists. In the 1950s, the Women's Bureau went into examination of the employment of women. In the late 50s, they changed their attention to college graduates. This eventually led to the Equal Pay Act. In the 1960s, the Equal Pay Act was signed off on by John F. Kennedy. This was created to have a law stating that women and men should be paid equal for equal work. On December 16, 1977, Doris Bossart, Sylvia Erickson Cole, Jane Hargith Gruthius, Taryn Novotny, Shirley Solentize, Glennis Terwisha, Sandy Tremmel, and Irene Whalen went on strike at National Citizens Bank in Willmar, Minnesota. They were a group of bookkeepers and tellers. The women were getting paid $300 less a month than their male counterparts, who would start out at $700 a month. A woman working at the bank for 10 years would get paid less than a man just starting out. Women at the bank were expected to work overtime with no additional pay. The bank's only female bank officer earned $4,000 less than her male counterparts, whom she supervised. The women became incredibly frustrated when they were asked to train a new male employee who was hired into a role that none of the women were even offered or able to apply for. Frustrated, these women went to the bank president, Leo Persh, and demanded an end to the discrimination that they and other women at the bank were facing. Mr. Perch's response was, "We're not all equal, you know. Men need more money to pay for dates." After Mr. Perch made these statements, the woman knew that diplomacy was not going to work. The town of Willmar in 1977 had a population of around 14,000 people and was well known as a union town thanks to its rich history with the Great Northern Railroad, as well as being a regional Medicare center with a strong union presence. Because of the strong union presence in town and the inability to come to a resolution with the bank, the women viewed the strike as their only option to bring attention to what they were facing. It wasn't an easy process forming the strike. The number of women who were planning on going on strike was originally 13, but due to the efforts of the bank management, the number of women who actually went on strike was lowered to 8. The efforts to threaten the women backfired for some, making them want to reveal the bank's unfair labor practices even more. Many of the women were scared to go on strike because of the financial toll it might take on them. Not only were some worried about money, they were also worried about what their families would think of the strike.
Shortly after I started work, I was in the break room on my own, and one of the junior officers came in and asked me if I knew anything about what was going on at the bank with the women. And I said, I've heard a little bit, but I haven't heard a lot. And he said that being I was on probation, that I could jeopardize my job at the bank if I became involved with what they were doing. So it was a threat that backfired on him.
May 1977, the women formed Minnesota's first bank union, the Willmar Bank Employees Association Local 1. The bank union was formed with the hopes of finding equality as well as agency amongst other unions. After going on strike, the women filed a complaint to the National Labor Relations Board, NLRB. They filed charges of unfair labor practices. They also filed a gender discrimination complaint with the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which the woman later dropped in exchange for a small financial settlement orchestrated by the EEOC. The strike brought up different feelings in this small town. Many were outraged that these women were bringing this kind of attention to their otherwise quiet town. Many didn't understand why the Willmar 8 couldn't just make peace and just accept that these things happen. Others, however, thought what the women were doing was great. Many thought that the strike was just, and the women should be fighting for equality. The topic of the Willmar 8 was rarely talked about between the public locally. It was a sore subject for most people to discuss in person. Very few religious organizations weighed in on the actions of the Willmar 8. Local newspapers and radio did not cover the events at the same scale as regional, state, and international newspapers and television did. Most of the debate locally were made at a household level. During the strike, the women received many donations from people who heard their story and were touched by it. Some other women and equal labor rights organizations donated to them, but it wasn't a steady income like a job. The women wanted to work. The lack of steady income and relying on donations was not going to work long-term for the women and their families. In February of 1978, there were over 250 United Auto Workers who traveled to Willmar to picket and show support for the women. The women also received letters of support from around the world. The neighboring service station supplied bathrooms for the women to use, and people often brought food for the picketers to eat. As the strike dragged on, the bank struggled mightily and was sold. The president of the bank, Mr. Persh, reiterated at the time of the sale that it was not a result of the strike. Crossing a picket line to deposit or withdraw money was a larger deterrent for patrons of the bank. New homeowners looking for home loans that were employed by local unions were also not going to cross the picket line when there were other banks next door that were not being picketed. Strike lasted 2 long years and through 2 cold Minnesota winters. When the strike's end came, in September 1979, the NLRB ruled the strike was not formed from unfair labor practices. They ruled that the bank had unfair labor practices, but that was not why the women went on strike. They ruled that the Willmar 8 went on strike for more money and a union contract. This resulted in the end of the strike. The decision was not what the women were hoping for. The women failed in earning equal pay and opportunities within the bank. 7 of the 8 women did not retain their jobs at the bank. Glennis Derwisha went through a divorce, and the lives of the other women would never be the same. The women found it hard to find other work in the area after the strike ended. The woman's lawyer, John Mack, for taking the woman's case, lost his position as the chair of the GOP for Kandiyohi County. Later, when asked his feelings, he stated, "They, the women, were right, and I didn't conceive of it then, and I still don't conceive of it now, as being a partisan issue." Easy to look back and see all that the women lost during the strike, as well as after the court ruling. There was a heavy toll on the women's families, careers, and community. Though the women failed in their mission for themselves, history has shown that they succeeded by inspiring many women not only around the country, but the world, to fight for what is right. Women working at other banks and businesses in the area noticed a change for the better in how they were being treated. All women in banking and labor gained from their strike. These women showed you don't have to win to move the issue.
My mother-in-law worked in a bank in Olivia, and she said that she felt improvements within their own bank because of what the Willmar 8 had done.
Think of the word debate. I think of 2 people arguing or discussing who's right. For the Willmar 8, the debate over the unfair practices was ultimately left for the judge to decide. There was also plenty of debate within the group of women that were striking, their families, and in the households of their community members. There was plenty of debate across our nation as well as the world about what was happening. When I think of diplomacy, I think of 2 people or groups meeting to create peace or come to an agreement over an issue. The women tried to be diplomatic when they met with the bank's president to discuss the bank's unfair treatment towards them and their women co-workers. They were turned away and dismissed, resulting in the strike. They left the rest of the diplomacy in the hands of the courts, and they lost. However, by the women doing what they did, other women in banking and in business gained immensely. Their strike brought attention, as well as action, so others would not suffer the same fate as the bank being sold, or the women losing their jobs, or not having equal opportunity for advancement in their careers. Women lost in their civil fight over the unfair actions of the bank. The bank was ruled the winner by the courts, but the true winners were all the other women in banking and business who were shown more respect by their employers and rewarded with more fair opportunities to grow. The women failed to get what they wanted out of the strike, but also gained for others.